Thanks for that, Sarah. Joining us on Skype now from London, Sue Llewellyn, a former BBC journalist, now a social media consultant, trainer for journalists. Nice to see you, Sue. I chose to engage with someone on Twitter about this story today, rightly or wrongly, and they replied to me and said, Maggie just couldn't handle democracy. Twitter isn't perfect, but it is also full of brilliant people from all walks of life. Maybe she's just having a woe is me moment. Now, I have to take that into consideration and say that that is how Twitter works. That's how life works. There are good people and bad people, and maybe you just got to suck it up sometimes.
Sometimes you have, but I do think she has a point that it gets to a point where you don't want to suck it up anymore and you do need to take a break. And I don't think there's any harm at all in taking a break. I think all of us should, whether you're a journalist or not. These platforms are designed for addiction. They're designed to give you that sort of dopamine hit and make you want more and more and more of it. So I think it's a good idea to take a step back from time to time and realise it's not necessarily the real world. You know, there's a life out there to be had, and there's things to do aside from stay online and listen to abuse.
So as a trainer then, how do you advise journalists, and maybe I'm just fishing for, free training here, but I want to understand how journalists, because, it's tempting to write back to every comment that we don't like, or it's tempting to engage all the time because we want to get our name out there as well. We want to get our views out there. We want to hear from other people. There's a fine line to tread, isn't there?
There's absolutely a fine line to tread. I think you need to be really strategic when you start using social media as a journalist. You've got to think of what you want to get out of it and what you want to give away by using it. So I would always start, whether I'm training journalists or, athletes or, world leaders, whatever it is, I tell them to sort out their privacy settings first, or probably better to say your publicity settings. How much do you want to share with people? So first of all, start with making it private and think strategically about what you want to get out of it and how you're going to use it. And initially, I think people did too much of just the broadcast as opposed to the conversation. So when I'm training with, presenters or whatever, I say, think of it like a traffic light. There's the red part of the traffic light, whereas the stuff you don't want to reveal, you don't want to share with people, the stuff you just shouldn't talk about. And the green bit is obviously your work and what you're doing and getting the news out there, providing context and insight. And the amber part is a little bit about you, a bit about your personal life, but without being too personal. So just be really careful and imagine, you're always on air, you're always being listened to. But I do think, as you said, there are some fantastic people out there. It's brilliant. But at the same time, I don't think the platforms are doing enough to protect people.
What more could they do?
I think they're a very clever bunch of people. There must be ways of dealing with abuse and filtering out threats. And certainly as far as we're concerned, you can decide not to take notifications on Twitter from people you don't follow or who don't follow you, or posts who haven't verified their email address. I think Twitter's done a good thing in banning, just killing off millions of bots. But that's a little bit too little too late. I would think they need to sort of freshen it all up. And they're clever enough to work out when something is abusive, but they possibly don't want to, because it's all about numbers. And if you start banning people, they'll say, oh, it's free speech. But free speech is not hate speech. It's not abusive speech. So I think there's a line to be drawn, and somebody needs to stand up and be stronger about this. It's just not good enough to let the hate speech continue.
Top tips from Sue Llewellyn, our social media consultant and a former journalist yourself. Great to talk to you, Sue. Thanks.
And you too. Cheers. Thank you.
And just building on what Sarah mentioned,